Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Lucas Oil, TireRack.com, and RockAuto.com. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
Thank you very much, Alec Webb. Welcome, everyone, to MotorWeek podcast number 279. And joining me today in Studio C at MotorWeek World Headquarters is Greg Carlos, Kyle Scanlon, and Alex Kellum. We've got three vehicles we're going to talk about today. We've got a lightning round, a viewer question from Charlie. However, we're going to basically take a look at two of the vehicles first, saving the return of a favorite to the end of the show. But we're going to begin with Power, the 2022 Porsche 718 Cayman GT4 RS. Greg, Carlos, take the lead. Tell us what it's all about and how much. The big grin on your face says an awful lot.
Yeah, well, I'm all about it. We literally just got back from the track yesterday, barely beat the rain, so we had a nice dry track.
And you were at Summit Point.
Summit Point Motorsports Park
Virginia.
just outside of Charlestown, West Virginia.
Right.
Didn't place any bets, though, at the casino. Placed them on the racetrack. So talking about the Cayman, if you're unfamiliar, this is the mid-engine Porsche, unlike a 911, which actually has the engine behind the rear axle. That's how you differentiate. The mid-engine is obviously between the two. So now that we have that refresher, let's get into the really good stuff. So GT4 RS essentially equals just super high performance car that's like barely street.
I was going to say, this is really... We keep getting closer and closer to a pure race car, and this is pretty darn close.
And I hesitate to say race car for the street because we pretty much say that with like once you hit the GT, so 911 GT3 or Cayman GT4. If you are confused, yes, there is a Cayman GT4. This is a separate car. The RS are the important letters at the end. And if you're looking at it, it basically makes the GT4 look like a tame street car because the GT4S or GT4 RS has NACA ducts in the hood. There's all kinds of diffusers on the front and the rear.
All sorts of aero control.
The wing is bigger. It sits up higher.
It's a huge wing.
Massive wing. Yeah. And the GT4 has a big wing. Yeah. And now you imagine this one sitting up even higher. It's even bulkier. It's a 3-stage wing, manually adjustable, so you can soup it up to the top to really maximize downforce, or you can keep it lower. We didn't even touch it because, we're, as good a drivers as we are, we're not that good. We're not able to tune it to specific tracks. But all of this to say, it is a fantastic car on the racetrack. You basically have to treat it as such. You can't really baby this thing around a racetrack because you don't get the full experience. And there's that whole fear wall, if you've ever done high performance driving, that you generally have to get over. This car doesn't really have it. It's just like you always feel comfortable because it's just so locked down on the road. The front end grip is insane. The rear end grip is insane. It doesn't have a ton of power, and I know that's a relative term because it's 493 horsepower.
But it's not 600 and 700.
Correct, and that's we'll go ahead and talk about the 911 Turbo S lightweight that we also had there. So I got to drive them back to back, and that has 640 horsepower as opposed to 493. Completely different animals. The GT4 RS is the car you go for if you want a visceral driving experience because they've actually added, instead of the rear windows, they've actually taken those out and they've added air intakes that feed the new air box. It's right on top of the engine in the cabin, right behind your head, and that's on purpose. So you hear the intake when you're on the street, when you're on the racetrack with a helmet on. It is loud. Having said that, this is not something I would recommend as a daily driver. It is rough on the road. It's kind of hard to see through the rear wing. Like I said, it's loud. If you're like me, I enjoy it, but most people who have visions of buying this car and say, I want to daily drive it or even drive it on the weekends, you might want to second guess that and maybe think about taking it to a racetrack because that's where the car belongs.
So it's really basically for those track days and for special occasions. So, I mean, it's already out. I hate to aim mass what the MSRP is. I'm sure it's way out of our price range.
141 is where it starts.
That's not as bad as I thought you might say. I mean, for basically a supercar like performance.
Considering the Turbo S lightweight that we had there is like 226.
Yeah.
And I had more fun. You know, I hit 169 at the end of the straight in the Turbo, and I hit 153 in the end of the straight. And this was absolute as late a braking as I could possibly do, as I felt comfortable with. So, yeah, you go faster in the Turbo, but I unequivocally had a better time in the GT4 RS because it's more suited for a racetrack.
Would that be your choice if you were going to get something just for kicks?
I'm having trouble because the GT3, the 911 GT3 is also awesome. And I would say because it only has a few more horsepower because it's the same engine. It's the 4-liter naturally aspirated, revs to infinity essentially. And that's infinity is 9,000 RPM. That's a good question. I think I would still... Oh, man, I'm even switching right now as I'm trying to figure it out.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot
I'd probably still go 911 GT3 just because that one was probably the top 3 track car I've ever driven because when we were at Roebling and we were doing car to car, I realized about like halfway through, like, oh, I don't even need to brake in this thing. I can go probably like 6/10 normally where I tap a brake and there's so much front end grip. Anyway, 718 GT4 RS is too good of a track car for me to really pick out things that aren't, good about it. Right. Makes you feel like a superstar. You can turn stability control off, and there's a little bit, like the tiniest bit of intervention just to make sure everything doesn't go sideways. You can still get sideways, but it won't let you get too far out of sorts. You feel like a superhero. It's just
I know people out there saying now you guys get paid for this. Yes, it is a job, but this is one of the ultimate perks of it. Alex, did you get any time in it?
Yeah, so I was
Alex is basically in the training mode when it comes to cars like that.
Little green on the racetrack, Fred.
But that's okay. I mean, we got everybody has to learn.
We all start somewhere.
So what did you think?
I mean, coming from like a novice, I mean that's one heck of a car to start with for sure. I mean, I loved it. And again, obviously I'm not at a point where I could pick out like little things that I didn't like or care for. But after having driven both, I had more fun in the GT4 RS for sure. And I mean, obviously like both were fun. It's hard to discern.
Right, but okay, let's hone in on that. So what made it stand out? It has less power. It's not quite the car. Anyway, go ahead.
It was Greg kind of alluded to this. It was just that much more visceral. Like driving it, I really felt like, wow, I'm in something really cool. And again, you've got that punch in the 911 that was, it was faster and all that, and it was cool. But something about that GT4 RS when you're riding in it.
Would you guys say that it was a smoother car around the track?
Smoother as in how? Like
basically. The transitions from the straights into the corners and back again, because it has less power, so it wouldn't be quite as punchy. But would you say that it's smoother? I mean, smooth always wins races.
Yeah, so. I mean, that was my first time on that circuit, so I'm still picking the lines, and I have the instructor showing me everything. But I felt personally like I was able to stick to the line a bit better in the GT4 RS. Maybe that's because it had less power.
There's a couple of reasons. It's easier to tie the whole course together. You really get into a rhythm, specifically on this is the main circuit at Summit Point. It's a very flowy track once you figure it out. It's smoother because of the transmission. It has a PDK only in this one, so dual clutch transmission, no manual in the GT4 RS. Comparing it to the 911 Turbo, the transmission held a gear when it had to. It shifted when it had to. I never even had to use the paddles because it was that good. The Turbo, I had issues with it upshifting when I didn't want it to. because also it doesn't rev as high. And specifically in going from 1 to 2, I got a mid-corner upshift every time. And in hindsight, I should have left it in manual and kept it in third. But the issue to make it less smooth than the GT4 is you also have that turbo, which as soon as it shifts, you lose boost a little bit. And then so that split second, there's an interruption in the balance of the car. And then because the turbo is just so ridiculously powerful, it then sends you into the corner
That's
faster
exactly
than you
what I
expect
meant.
it to.
Yeah.
And it's just the corners come up in that 911 Turbo S so fast, it's ridiculous. Like I thought I was going fast in the GT4, hopped in the 911, and I had to rewire my brain on how to get around the track because corners literally were coming up too fast for me.
Wow. Amazing experience. I think we should end it there. The 2022 Porsche 718 Cayman GT4 RS. Thanks, Greg. And now we're really going to throttle down, but to something of much more interest to probably most of the folks that are out there looking for a new SUV this summer. And this is the 2023 Toyota Sequoia. Kyle, you've had the seat time in it. What sets it apart? Of course, this is their big 3-row body-on-frame based on the latest Tundra.
Based on the latest Tundra.
Take it away.
I went out to do the Tundra event when they released it, I don't remember how many months ago, and I was very happy with that. And that just transferred right over to this Sequoia, where I am just as happy with it. The ride is very clean, very comfortable, and you have a lot of confidence in this car for a car that's so big. And I know we drive so many things that we're used to it, but I feel like specifically somebody coming from more of a mid-size SUV, if they wanted to upgrade and jump right into this, that there wouldn't be a whole lot of like, holy cow, this thing's gigantic. How did I make a mistake? Am I ever going to be able to park this thing? Which, concerns I have heard from friends of mine who are considering upgrading to larger vehicles like this. Comes in 5 different trim levels: SR5, Limited, Platinum, the new Capstone, and then the TRD Pro. That's all going up in price range from low to high. Every single one of them comes with the iForce Max engine, which is only an option in the new Tundra, but it comes standard in all of these vehicles. So this is a hybrid? Yes, it is a hybrid with 237 horsepower and 583 pound-feet of torque and 9,000-pound maximum tow rating. So they had an Airstream and a boat there for us to tow around, and the car just took off with them. No real issues there at all.
So this is full size.
Yeah,
and
big.
This is, I guess, Tahoe Expedition rival.
Definitely rivaling those vehicles.
There aren't that many body-on-frame big SUVs left, and a lot of people think, it used to be when you transitioned from, say, a mid-size car-based unibody frame to a body-on-frame, the body on frame didn't feel as secure because the body and the frame can actually move around against each other. But that was the first word out of your mouth that you felt secure in this.
I did.
So did you have any sensation that you were on a totally different style architecture?
No, not really.
Just felt very solid.
It just felt very solid. You were very connected to the road, and just like I said earlier, it just inspired a lot of confidence. Like I just had, no problem driving around country roads in Texas, and a lot of them. We had one GPS issue where about 12 of us in 6 vehicles got sent down a dead end road in the middle of nowhere, Texas, and so we just kind of had to start guessing which road to go down to get to the racetrack where we were headed. And there were windy roads, lots of quick little elevation changes and stuff that
didn't feel like you were hauling 5,000 pounds around.
Nope,
or whatever.
It didn't. It took the corners, it took the elevation changes with ease, and again, just. I keep beating it beating this word, but it's inspiring confidence. It really did.
Did you crawl into the second and third row at all?
I did. I got in the back of the second and third row.
Is the third row actually usable by adults?
One of the things they do offer is the third row slides back and forth 6 inches. So you can
That's unusual.
Yeah, so I believe Toyota's the only one doing that in this segment right now. And so I got back there, and even when it's all the way forward to give yourself that extra 6 inches behind the third row for cargo space, it's not terribly cramped. If it were Greg or Dave Scrivener, that might be a different story because they're both over 6 feet tall.
Are you?
I'm 5'9".
Okay.
5'10" on a good day. And one of the other things that's interesting is behind the sliding third row, they have adjustable cargo shelves. So I believe there were 3 different levels. You can take it out completely, or there was one height that had about 6 inches. One height that was about 6 inches off the bottom, so you could fit some sports equipment, baseball bats, baseball gloves, things like that, and then other things on top of it. And then there's 2 more levels to go up as well. So you can really, really work with the space behind the third row. And with that cargo shelf being adjustable, you're basically doubling the amount of space that you have, if depending on what you want to put in there. So I think it was a really smart move on Toyota for that.
Hey, since everybody's worried about fuel prices right now, do you remember offhand what the hybrid?
They did not have the numbers for us at the moment.
But it's probably pretty comparable to the Tundra.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, we're going to come back to Alex, who has the rundown on a 2023 four-door that we've been watching over the years and its return to the market, and we'll get back to that. But first, we're going to go to the lightning round, and we are going to switch gears here again, and we're going to talk about an electric vehicle and one that has a new advantage in the market. General Motors recently announced that they are slashing the price of the 2023 Chevrolet Bolt EV and EUV by up to $6,300. Now, the Bolt EV, the car one, will have a starting price of $26,595, and the larger SUV-style EUV, which is only front-wheel drive, or rather, is it front-wheel or rear-wheel drive? Anyway, it's two-wheel drive. Starts at $28,195. This makes the Chevrolet Bolt series the least expensive EV on the market, undercutting even the Nissan Leaf. Now, do you think, especially with rising gas prices, that will make Bolt sales boom? I should point out that General Motors is no longer eligible for the $7,500 federal tax credit. So this is a price basically out the door, I guess, more or less. What do you think? Is this going to supercharge the Bolt? Now, I should also point out, Bolts were off the market for over a year because of some battery fire issues, which were taken care of. And they're actually, I don't think there's even been any more situations that I'm aware of. But what do you think? Does this make the Bolt's prospects better?
If the dealers don't start adding money on top of it.
But right now, everybody's adding money on everything.
Yeah. So,
but in a perfect world,
if it was really $26,595, I think you'd start seeing more eyes looking their way. But I
mean, that makes it very competitive with just about anything else.
Yeah,
I mean, with
it definitely does.
Internal combustion engine vehicle of its class.
That's right around the Maverick price, isn't it?
Maverick's a little cheaper, but then that's a pickup.
So. Well, yeah, but I'm just saying for just price point.
Right.
I mean, I know it's difficult with me. You know how I feel about EVs. I'm not a huge fan, so it's difficult for me.
Get with the program, Kyle.
I know, man. I know. I'm trying.
Alex, any thoughts?
I mean, not that boom is necessarily quantitative, but I don't think boom is really maybe the right word for it. I think they will sell more. I think more people will look at them as an option because, that's a very attractive price, especially for people who want to get into EVs. One of the things I hear is like, oh, but they're just so dang expensive.
Right.
That price, I think a lot of people who are looking to buy a new car can swing that, or at least hopefully they can. It's kind of a bummer that they don't get the tax credit, but again, at that price, I mean, you really can't complain.
Well, I think that's the reason, and I think it actually says a lot about what's going on with some of these prices. I personally think a lot of the EVs that we see in here now they're making more profit on the vehicle because they know people are going to get up to $7,500 off.
Right.
And in this case, that premium is gone. So they've priced it to be competitive with other vehicles that still get that $7,500 off. So, Greg, any comment?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with Alex. I think they'll see an increase, especially now with the climate we're in terms of gas prices. I just don't think they're going to get anybody who's already into the EV scene. I think the people who are already in it and following it are going to want to go for the flashier stuff and are willing to pay a little bit more because the Bolt, the EUV, or just the regular Bolt are not very flashy vehicles. But I do think that, people who are now realizing they're putting $150, $200 a week into their car is might start looking up cheap EVs, and this is what's going to come up, the Bolt, and they're like, you know what? I just want to get off. I want to stop paying so much for fuel, and I think that's the kind of buyer who's going to get into the Bolt. And not that that's necessarily a bad thing. I just don't think the Bolt is really going to take off and keep pace with some of the other EVs.
You know, and by the way, I'm correcting myself. The Bolt is front-wheel drive. It is only a two-wheel drive vehicle. I wish they had in the SUV, the EUV, I wish it was a little had all-wheel drive. That would make it a huge advantage. And looking at them side by side, to be honest, I don't think the utility version is that much more useful than the regular version. So I'm looking at it and thinking, okay, this is a very nice. We talk about EVs right now being almost perfect for around town. It's got, 238-mile range. That's very competitive given its price. And I look at it and think it doesn't take up a lot of garage space. This is actually, along with some others, there's the others, it's not the only small one out there, but this is a very competitively priced, actually cheaply priced, around town EV. And right now, since with gas prices what they are, I think they'll sell everyone they can get their hands on.
It'll probably compete with the BZ4X, Toyota's new electric, because it's actually similar in range. I mean, the BZ4X doesn't tout a huge range.
It is bigger,
and it's bigger, but it's also starts over $40,000 before the tax credit. So I mean, you can still they're still going to undercut it in price. So like I said before, somebody who just wants to get away from gas powered vehicles, I mean, might find themselves in a Bolt now.
Now, there is strategy here. GM has already announced that upcoming EVs on the Chevrolet line are going to start in the low 30s, like 33. So they basically pulled the Bolt price down to leave room for what's coming next. I don't know if that was the Equinox, or I think it probably is the EV Equinox. Okay. Very good. And let's move on now to our viewer question from Charlie Ginn, Ginn. Charlie, who will be the first to market an EV convertible? So on the subject of EVs, we're now basically, when you start talking about a convertible, you're talking about kind of a car that you don't necessarily need, but would be nice to have on a nice summer day. We know that Tesla has shown, a new Roadster. But besides Tesla, who do we think might come out with a convertible first?
I hope it's Lexus. I really do. I think because I drove the LC500 hybrid, which is good, and they just came out with the RZ 450e, so they have their first all-electric mid-sized SUV. Right. And I like what they did with the styling of it. They didn't change it so much from the RX that it looks crazy different. It's in the family. It definitely has some little styling points that it's an EV as opposed to the other models. But I think if Lexus was able to put together an all-electric LC500, then you might start to get me to change my mind about EVs.
That would be big bucks. Yeah. But I think it's just going to be big bucks anyway. Anyone else have an opinion?
I'm not entirely sure who exactly. I think it'll either be something European or just an offshoot, maybe like an indie startup will come out with something and be like, hey, look, convertible. Because, that's a segment that hasn't necessarily been tapped.
Greg?
John, you and I think we came to the same answer as we were talking off air.
It has three initials.
One of the Germans, we both said BMW, but I could also see Mercedes doing it. They like to do the drop tops. But I would say the i4, the new BMW EV, lends itself to convertible style.
Yeah, I think Mercedes has already dropped some hints that they might do. I mean, they've done away with their SLK. They just have the SL left in the Roadster. I think they've dropped some hints there might be something else coming there. But I agree with you. I think it's going to probably be BMW. It's a rather natural. You've got, there's really absolutely nothing that would keep them from doing it. You've got a sturdy body that has to handle all those batteries in the first place. You'd give up some rear seat room, if not give it up entirely. But I agree with you. So, Charlie, I hope that answers your question. We're just guessing out here, but, that's what these podcasts are all about.
We're just always guessing.
Always guessing. But we're going to go back to someone that actually knows something, and we're going to turn to Alex and talk about the return
Yes.
the Acura Integra 2023, 4-door only. I know that disappoints people.
Yeah,
but tell
yeah.
us what else we know about it, Alex.
Yeah, so I had the honor of spending the most time with the demo model we got in. Specifically, ours was the A-Spec with Tech package, which, if people aren't aware, so the new Integra is basically only available in, I guess you could say, 3 trims. It's one, the base is just called Integra, then you bump up to A-Spec, and then ours was the A-Spec with Tech. The reason why that's important is because that's also the only model you can get the 6-speed manual and the limited slip differential. Which a lot of people want. Actually, I think it's 65% of people, Acura said, are taking the manual transmission.
Now, let me stop you right there. Why is that? Give us a short capsule of what Integra buyers historically have done with their cars. These are people that do a lot of parking lot races, so they are into manuals.
Right. They want something that's sporty. They want something that's fun.
That they've got control of.
Right. Previously, we had talked about how, traditionally some of the most beloved Integras were 2-door liftbacks and everything. And while, this one is, a 4-door, so it loses a little bit of that. I think, Acura obviously wanted to keep some of that street cred going. That being said, speaking of like controllability and everything, it utilizes the 1.5 liter. It's 200 horsepower on the nose, 192 pound-feet of torque. And speaking of that manual transmission, man, was that thing easy to drive.
Historically, I got another Honda Acura trait.
Right. I mean, like, they really nailed it there. The clutch was super light, and Steven had brought this up. He drove it a little, and he said, the clutch feels a little, it wasn't as precise. And when I first got in it, it was a little ambiguous because of how light it was. But outside of that, once I got used to it, I loved the way the clutch felt. Shifting, it's a short throw shifter from the factory, or at least, for a factory installed one, it's short. So it all felt really nice. Driving it, I mean, you can tell it's based off of a Civic. You really can. I have not driven.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, that's not a bad thing at all. I mean, it's definitely a little bit more aggressive, but more notably, it's more premium. It's more upscale. Especially ours that we had.
Acura is a brand that has survived because of its utility vehicles. And it tells me that they must have some confidence in the future to spend that much money on a car. During an era where cars are totally out of favor, and a sporty one. But when you really look at the new Integra, does it have any real direct competitors? At that price point? I don't know.
How much?
Silence.
So that's the thing. The price point's really good. It's starting just over $30,000, and the one we drove, which again is the top, is $35,000. So I mean, that's really good price wise. That's going to compete
very competitive against the Europeans.
Yeah. So. Something that when I did my first drive, I didn't take note of this in the video, or I didn't say it because I was worried about being misconstrued, but I think it's kind of a valid point, is when I got in the new Integra, I felt like I was in a new Acura before I felt like I was in a new Integra.
Interesting.
And I guess...
Is that just the way it's laid out inside?
Yeah, I mean, when you get in it, starting with the looks and everything, like, people thought, like, I think it was Jessica, said that it kind of looked like a baby TLX and kind of felt like one, which again... Not really a bad thing.
No, a bad thing at all.
TLX was pretty nice. But I guess my point is, when I sat inside of it, it's like, okay, I can tell they took the Civic, they made it more upscale, a little more precise, a little bit more premium.
Looks very different.
Yeah, it looks different. I don't think it shares a single body panel with the Civic. But I didn't get into it with this, like, nostalgia-laden view of it, I guess.
That means he's too young, folks.
You might be disappointed if you do.
Yeah, well,
and that was my point.
I was certainly disappointed, and I mean, I'll just say it, when it came out and I saw the pictures. I actually still haven't seen it in person. I just it didn't do anything for me.
And I understand that. And I think if you go into it like that, like you're thinking, oh, it's a new Integra, this is going to be super awesome, I can't wait to get in it. Yeah, it is. It actually is a little underwhelming. But me going into it with less of a nostalgia or an opinion of the older ones, partially, because I'm younger, but also just, I don't know, I've just never really been into the Integra that much. Driving this one, I still, as a car, I thought it was excellent. I thought they did a really good job.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's gonna. Well, I mean, I'm sure it drives great. I haven't driven it, like I said. We know from the TLX that Acura can put together a nice sporty 4-door.
And it's thank goodness they're still doing it.
Yeah, and what's the deal with the ILX? Because that was originally the Acura's version of the Civic, and like I even brought it up at a press event, and people were like, "Oh yeah, the ILX."
Yeah,
Right.
Like I don't know if maybe
I think a lot has to do with the name, but
Yeah, I
actually,
agree.
given the fact that it did not capture your imagination, I'm actually amazed that they went to the trouble to do a small car.
So when you mentioned the parking lot racing and stuff like that, let's say I grew up right in that era and may have participated in some of that in my younger years. But it was,
That yellow all over your clothes is not from cones.
So, I had a 99 Mitsubishi Eclipse when all that stuff was going on. I had friends with Integras, Preludes, Civics, all of that, body kits, rims, loud exhaust systems, all that just obnoxious stuff. So, when I heard about the Integra, I was really excited because I always loved them. Right. It was always one of the cars that I was the most jealous of. If
you aspired
yeah,
to.
If we were all in the parking lot showing our cars off, and we'd have 20 or 30 cars down by a beach in Stamford, Connecticut, and when the nice Integras would roll in, I'd just be like, dang, like that's not mine, because that looks really, really good. And then I walked out. Alex told me the Integra was here when it showed up. I basically ran out of the office very excited and got in front of it and kind of went, oh. Which is it's just the honest truth. It's just the 4-door, and I just wasn't as happy to see it as I thought it would be.
Why? I mean, since you've just socked him in the chin.
I did, and I'm sorry, but it didn't. Maybe I'm just too connected to the older models or something like that, but it just didn't hit me with any like emotion at all. There was nothing about it.
I was very excited to see it. I think
that's
it
a
looks
problem.
really slick.
I was excited to see it, and then I wasn't.
Well, let's hope that those 65% of the people that have put their money where their mouth is are more as excited as I was, and not feeling any disappointment. But anyway, Alex, just to sum it all up. Sum up the car in a few words. You were happy driving it.
The best way to sum it up is exactly what we were just talking about. If you go into it with nostalgia because you really like the old Integras, you will probably be a little disappointed. And it would have been cool if they had made a 2-door liftback, but they didn't. As a car, as a 4-door liftback, I think it's great. I like the way it looks. I like the way it drives. I think a lot of people are going to get these, and they're going to be happy.
I think if I had to say, they probably are aiming at people your age more than mine.
Yeah, probably.
And so that may be the out.
When's the Type S coming?
Yeah.
Do you know?
Did they? Yeah. Did
No.
they even indicate?
That was an actual question.
There has to be.
No, I don't think
they
they've
wouldn't make
said
this without a Type
right.
S.
I don't think they've said
way.
when it's coming, but yeah.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Thanks, everybody. We've have time for any rant and raves. I guess we can all rant about fuel prices, but then again, that's nothing new. Anybody got anything else? It bothered, between this and the last podcast, some statistics came out about how many traffic accident fatalities there were in 2021. And basically, it's the most we've had in this country since 2005. So all of the progress in traffic accident fatalities and all the new safety systems on vehicles that pull those numbers down, it seems to be for naught. And I don't know about you, but it just seems to me most of it, people say, well, people are driving too fast. It's not that. It's people are ignoring common sense and courtesy on the road. Yeah. And you just see it every single day. I was driving the Bolt EUV that we've got in at work. And I was trying to be careful on the battery, not basically giving it too much throttle. But I was, let's say, a little above the speed limit. And people are passing you like they're going out of style. And then when they get in front of you, they whip over to your lane. And, one fellow went by me and passed on the shoulder. And it's saying, what are you doing? And I don't know what we have to do to get that back, which bothers me. It'll be some draconian measure taken by governments. But folks out there, you're playing with fire, and you're going to ruin it for all of us.
There's a social responsibility that comes with driving.
That seems to be gone.
It definitely comes hand in hand with the pandemic, because I was still, traveling to the office anywhere between 3 and 5 days a week for,
because you had to shoot the cars.
Because I had to shoot the cars, and all the highways opened up, a lot less traffic, so people that were still out there commuting were getting way more aggressive and way more brave. Just, like you said, passing on the shoulder, even though they didn't need to. I feel like now that more people are coming back, the highways are getting more congested again. And, at first I was getting annoyed, but I'm like, can everyone just go back home so I can have this 25 minutes off of my commute from the traffic congestion areas? And it seems like, that's the crazy aggressive driving I'm seeing way, way more often now as opposed to before the shutdown.
And it gets me that I don't think law enforcement is set up to basically tag aggressive drivers. Their devices and all are speed related, and I don't know what it would take. I don't like Big Brother looking over my shoulder any more than anyone else, but something has to give here. Okay, we got a little off track. Anyone got anything else?
Just drive safe.
And
so that's what it comes down to. Just drive safe.
I want to thank our road test producer, Kyle Scanlon, our writer, Alex Kellum, and, of course, our over-the-edge reporter and hot shoe of the moment, Greg Carlos. Thank you all out there for being a part of our Motor Week podcast. Basically, if you're looking for more about Motor Week, we'd like to direct you to our website at motorweek.org. If you want to know what public television station in your area carries us and the times, we have up-to-date listings on our website. Just go up to the corner, pull down about the show, put in your zip code of your state, and you'll get all of the airings in your area. Or you can hop over to our cable partner at mavtv.com for their schedule. They show us 6 or 7 times a week. You can watch all of the highlights from Motor Week on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/MotorWeek, and recent episodes in their entirety for free over at pbs.org/MotorWeek. Basically, if you have any kind of video device, you can find and watch Motor Week, and you can also on our website, of course, listen to all of our podcasts. So I want to thank our audio engineer, Jillian Cookman, our podcast producer, of course, Jessica Ray, and podcast creator, Bob Mixter. And thanks to everybody out there for being a part of Motor Week.
You've been listening to the podcast of Motor Week, television's original automotive magazine. Motor Week is made possible by Lucas Oil, TireRack.com, and RockAuto.com. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at motorweek.org. And watch Motor Week, television's longest-running automotive magazine series each week on your local PBS station.